Hello, welcome back to the Gotti Video podcast. This is a space where we host conversations with different designers, architects, and industry thought leaders to help educate you in your work. My name is Joe Gotti, and I'm the COO and Director of Design here at Gotti Furniture. For today's episode of the podcast, I have the opportunity to talk with Michelle Ohnstad, Library Operations Manager at MiraCosta College in Oceanside, California, who has over 20 years of experience in library leadership. In our conversation today, we wanted to explore Michelle's experience as a leader in higher education and are working with students throughout MiraCosta library spaces. Michelle, it's an honor to have you here today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's really nice to see you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the time today.
Sure.
So usually we like to start with getting a little background on folks. How did you kind of get here today and what do you do now?
Sure. Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, pretty much. And I got a bachelor's degree in business administration and finance, and I started working in financial services. Then my husband and I, in the mid-90s, decided to leave Minnesota and move to the San Diego area. And I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to head. So I thought that maybe I'd like to become a high school teacher and teach business and economics on the high school level. So I thought, well, I'll start working at a school in a classified position just to see what it's like working in a school and kind of get my feet wet. So I was a media technician, kind of like the more modern version of the AV person. You know, I mean, I was still repairing 16 millimeter projectors with rubber bands and stuff like that.
Wow.
But my office was in the library, and I saw like right away how students use that space and as a welcoming and safe space, and the work that the librarians were doing with students, and I just kind of fell in love with the place. At the same time, San Jose State University was out here in Southern California. There was a shortage of school librarians at that time, and they were recruiting teachers and wannabe librarians to enter their grad program. So I did that and got my master's in library science. And back then, the part of the curriculum that was online was pretty much an email list. And we met at various libraries a couple of weekends a month and worked together on the program. So after that, I got a job at a K-12 college prep school as the high school librarian. And I loved doing that, teaching information literacy and all that kind of stuff. And then I left to have some kids. And then I returned to that same role. But then in addition to that, I was made the department chair for the library at the college prep school I worked at. And then in 2015, found this amazing job at MiraCosta College. And I'm now in my 9th year. And as the library manager, I collaborate with the faculty librarians that I work with to create programs and spaces. And I manage the budget, I take care of the facilities, and miscellaneous things. And I work with an amazing team of classified professionals who run our circulation and technical services. And I serve on a lot of committees and work with all kinds of people inside and outside my department to further initiatives of the college. And I have great people that I work with, and I love it here.
No, it sounds great. Yeah, it's interesting. It's not too often that I find someone that we're interviewing that has a library background that, you know, had a direct path into the library. It's always like, I did this, and then I went to work in a library, or I volunteered at a library, and then like kind of fell in love with it. And then I got my library science degree or something like that. So it always seems to be a different path to get there.
A little bit. I also worked as a library technician while I was in grad school. And that really gave me an inside view of how a library operates and how the school librarians teach information literacy and connect kids with books and all that encompasses. And I just really loved being around that and really decided, you know, this is where I want to be with my career.
Gotcha. That's very fascinating. At MiraCosta, it's been a long time since I've been out there.
Yeah.
How many spaces are there? Is it one central library space? Is it multiple spaces? Like, can you give us like kind of a lay of the land?
Sure. We have 3 library facilities right now. Our main one is at the main Oceanside campus where I am. And then we also have a library down at our San Elijo campus, which is down in Cardiff by the Sea, south of here, right along the coast. And then we also have a very vital community learning center in another part of Oceanside. And that's primarily our non-credit and ESL classes, adult high school, and programs like that. And we have a library presence on that campus as well.
So I know that, in full disclosure, you've been a supporter of Agati for quite some time, which we really appreciate.
Indeed.
Most of the time we're focusing on, things in general, but I do, since you guys have been purchasing furniture from us for so long, I'd like to just get a little understanding about, why Agati, how are things performing, how are you using the stuff in the space?
Sure. So the relationship between our college and Agati goes back to before I was here. And the main library building that is actually undergoing renovation right now, Agati did all the soft seating and tables in there, and that building opened in 2003. We're in the middle of a remodel, which I'll talk about again in a minute. But since I've been here since 2015, we've been focused on obtaining things like pods and G chairs. And oh my gosh, the students love pods and G chairs so much. They comment on them when we give surveys, and you can tell how much they value these special pieces. We have nappers sometimes that they're sitting in a G chair and they're napping, which speaks to the comfort of the seating that you design. And then we also see not very frequently, but sometimes we see what we've affectionately referred to as two peas in a pod, and that is we'll see a couple students nestled in together, working on a laptop in a pod, sitting two people on the seat in the pod.
Oh, interesting.
It's great. And I think the students really appreciate us purchasing furniture that is comfortable and durable and has charging ports, which is really important to students. And in the case of pods, envelops them in a sort of safe cocoon so that they can concentrate on their work. We're in the midst of a library remodel right now, and we're in a temporary trailer right now. And when we were planning the space and what we'd move over, we were adamant about moving all the pods and G chairs that we could fit in this space. And it worked out. It looks beautiful. The students love them. And the pods and Gs will continue to have a large presence in our remodeled space, which we move into by the summer of 2024.
Okay.
We also have down at the San Elijo campus, over some remodeling that was done over the last few years, we have a lot of nooks there. And we also have G chairs and pods. And even when that library was also renovated, those pieces came back in, and then some new ones with new upholstery, different from the ones that we had before. So we love our Agati stuff, and the students really like it. I think they really do appreciate that we found this great solution, and the students love it. I always talk about in the main library when we were in there, if you're a student studying by yourself at night, when the library was open in the evening, you don't have somebody coming up behind you when you're sitting in a carrel, like when you're sitting in a carrel. So in the pods, you can look up and you can see people around you. But when you look down acoustically, it makes it easy for you to concentrate. You can plug in your stuff. You can throw your bag on the little table. And it's comfortable. And the students really, really love them. I think it was a really a game changer in terms of library seating, for sure.
No, it's great. Well, I'm obviously I'm glad that they're working out so well and the students are enjoying them.
Yeah.
You said you're in the midst of a remodel. So what's going on there?
The building was built in 2002 and opened in 2003. And, something we'll talk about later is, things are shifting, learning is shifting. Our building started to have more and more usage on one level by learning centers, tutoring, especially in STEM and the sciences, and the writing center all became very important places for students to get help. And so this remodel will we'll make the spaces on both of the floors. The library will be on the second floor. The first floor will be learning centers. The remodel is going to just give us a better spaces overall to serve students' needs. And the way students have been changing in the way that they want to learn and receive material, it'll just be a much more workable space. And we're excited to get back in there.
Well, sounds exciting. So when you, so a couple things I want to go back to on that. You say things are shifting. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I guess this speaks to the human behavior question that we were talking about. Students need space. They really need quiet spaces where they can concentrate on their work, such as the comfy chairs and the pods. But they also want group spaces where they can work together and socialize with their peers.
Mm-hmm.
Study rooms are still incredibly important to students now. In our study rooms, we make sure to have a flat screen with an HDMI connection for students to be able to project their work, especially when they're working on group projects. And marker boards. Students love to still have whiteboards where they can jot things down on the board. And we want to have that in each room so students have the same experience, study room to study room. Of course, we have study rooms that are bigger and some that are smaller. And the students reserve their rooms on an app or on a kiosk on an iPad when they come in the library. And, sometimes students need a place to take a little nap. Like we found a couple of people napping in the G chairs recently, and they look so peaceful. I wanted to maybe buy some blankets to add to the collection. But we're getting more and more students back to campus. I'm going to reflect a little bit on post-pandemic in a few minutes, but we're welcoming more and more students back to campus. They're getting excited to be back here and be part of the college community. And we have a lot of construction going on. We had a major bond that passed from the voters passed in 2016, and that's the construction, the remodel of the library, along with a lot of other construction projects, is part of a larger educational and facilities master plan that the college has undergone. And it's to create efficient spaces for students, give them spaces where they feel that they belong. Students need newer spaces that are more flexible and speak to the needs they have in getting their education.
Yeah. So I just want to touch on that. You said more flexible. What do you, I guess when you say flexible, what does that mean to you?
I think it means being flexible with how you use spaces in general, trying to accommodate different kinds of learners in different scenarios. Listening to people and having the ability to adjust to meet expectations of students, because that's what we're all here for. And so if students are telling us that they want more study space, then that's what's in the plan. So we listen to what the students want. Whenever there are these construction projects, students are the end users, and they're included in the conversations of the building designs and the interiors and what the options are. And students do have a voice in that process.
And so again, going back again, you started talking about human behavior. So what spaces, environments have you been seeing most popular to students, and what do they gravitate towards?
Well, definitely in our spaces, the pods and the G chairs and the nooks at our other campus. But study rooms are great. We have, as the return to campus continues, we have some students who are taking a class in person, and then they have a Zoom class right afterward. So they're seeking places where they can hunker down with their laptop and talk and participate in a Zoom class. And then rush off to their other class, and then maybe that's in person, and then maybe they have an online class that's asynchronous, and so they can come in and nestle into a pod and do their work in their asynchronous class as well. So that's definitely one shift that we've seen.
Interesting. So have you found, I guess, last year your full a full year where you guys were open all year? And then did you find that the numbers of people either on campus or at the libraries, were they getting back up to the 2019 levels, or?
We're still not there yet, but we are seeing an increasing enrollment, which is a great thing. I seem to see, because I also have my own kids that are in this age group, I see the incoming freshmen as being excited to return to campus, because a lot of those kids spend 10th, 11th, and 12th grade completely online. And while they're, definitely the TikTok generation and they're on their phones all the time, they want to be in person and they want to feel that they're part of a campus. And so they are returning. I would say the younger students and the older students are coming back to campus. They want to interact in person with the faculty and the staff, and not do everything online. But we still have a huge online presence. Many students take classes online. All of our services, including the library is a 24/7 chat option. We have a lot of things online, so students could take care of business and get help and tutoring in that way as well.
When you're seeing students in the space, are you finding is it like 50-50? That's like seeking out individual space versus like group space? Or do you find that students are more gravitating, there's more percentage of people gravitating more individual, like I need more privacy? Or is it more group focused, like a little more social, like kind of atmosphere? What are you observing there?
I think it's definitely both. One thing that we are lucky here in San Diego is our great weather that we have almost all year round. Even when it rains, it's great because we need the rain when it rains. But students also like the outside spaces, and they can do that since we have such a mild climate most of the academic year.
Mm-hmm.
So students gather outside, they like to gather inside. They do like both group and private spaces. And again, because sometimes they have an on-ground class, then they have a Zoom class, and then maybe they need to get together with a group of their peers to work on a project. So I don't know if it's really a 50-50 split necessarily, but definitely both options, all options are what students are looking for right now.
Interesting. So what is like the demographic makeup of the student body? Is it mostly people staying on campus and living there, or is it heavy commuter, or is there a split? Like, how is that?
Well, we are a community college, so we do not have housing on our campuses, although that's something that some community colleges in the state and us are looking at and doing studies on, what could housing look like. So we're primarily a commuter college, but we get students from the North County of San Diego, which is where we're located, because we have a bunch of other community colleges in the county, and San Diego County is fairly large. So all kinds of students. There are some students who are strictly online who never set foot on campus, and then some students who try and take all their classes in person, and then a mix. And they live all over the county. Even if they're by another community college in another part of the county, they may still choose MiraCosta. And a lot of the colleges, we have different programs. We have more emphasis in certain areas than other colleges. And so students have a choice. And we're glad that they choose us.
So it's interesting. I didn't realize there was no kind of on-campus housing. So you think most people are commuting in, or if they're living kind of closer to campus then?
Yeah, it doesn't help that we're probably the most expensive place to live in the U.S. Which makes a lot of things difficult for our students. Something that that I wanted to touch on a little bit is what we're seeing post-pandemic. And, a lot of the shifts in what we're doing here really is based on, changes that occurred because of the pandemic. Yeah. So one thing that kind of goes along with the affordability factor is in 2019, my team and I piloted a program where we loaned out laptops and hotspots.
Oh, wow.
We were doing that for a week at a time. And then all of a sudden we shut down in spring of 2020, and the library was directed to get out a lot of laptops and hotspots to students because everything pivoted to online learning. And so we started this program, and a lot of it was funded through grant money. And it's been sustained to the level that the demand is just growing all the time. And so what that tells us is that there's still a huge digital divide in this country. There's a lot of folks that live in communities that don't have adequate cellular coverage or internet, and they frankly just can't afford it. And so, we're having a lot more students being online, but they don't have the necessary equipment. So that program has become a major focus of what we do in the library. We manage the system, and every semester we're loaning out hundreds of laptops and mobile hotspots. And a lot of students simply wouldn't get through their courses if they didn't have that support. I hope one day high-speed internet will be as ubiquitous as just, having San Diego Gas and Electric turn your lights on.
Yeah.
And I think that's a larger government infrastructure issue, but I think it's very important. Connectivity in this day and age is definitely something that our communities need, for sure.
So it was something you said you started in 2019 then?
Yeah, well, even earlier than that, in 2016, we started checking out laptops to people in the library so they could bring it into a study room and hook it up to a TV. And so we found a lot of momentum with that. And then we bought the hotspots, and then we let students take them home for a couple of days at a time. And then we got feedback. Students said, I really need a week to use this equipment. And so then we started checking them out for a week at a time. And then the pandemic shift, we checked out things for the entire year. And then as we returned to campus, we started checking things out on a semester by semester basis. And we really strive to make sure our program targets disproportionately impacted student populations at our campus. So that's very important to us that we pre-advertise our new cycle of loans to departments that support disproportionately impacted students at our college, so they can get right on it and make sure that they can get a computer and a hotspot, because the equipment, while we have a lot of it, it is limited. We only have so much, so there are students who will be left out.
That's really great. I mean, we had a podcast last week, and they're talking about universities and community colleges and how people forget about the service that the library gives. It's not just the books. And I always said, like, the community colleges really have it tough because compared to academic, university libraries where it's, usually serving like a very set kind of demographic. The community colleges, it's challenging. It's a very broad demographic. They almost look more like public libraries to some degree. And so it's great. And so laptops, are there other services you guys are doing or considering doing to kind of support the student population there?
Yeah, so something that's going on throughout the state of California from the California Chancellor's Office for Community Colleges is there are a lot of initiatives to shift towards zero or low cost textbooks. And so, there's been grants, and one of my librarian colleagues has been pretty instrumental in working on a grant where you receive money for faculty to develop low cost or zero cost materials for the student, because textbooks cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And sometimes that makes the difference for a student, whether they can afford to attend class or not. So again, one of my library colleagues works on that effort. We also try and get as many textbooks as we can in the library for students to use in the library as a course reserve. And so we look at the book list every semester and try and get, the most popular and expensive books for sure, so that a student can come in and sit and read the chapter in their biology book before they go off to class. So we do a lot of that with course reserves. Another thing we've done is we have a very, very robust print and electronic collection in our library. But during the pandemic, we started to acquire a lot more streaming services or streaming films. So not only for our film classes, but also a lot of other subject areas will assign films, and it's based on what the faculty need is. We also have tons of specialized databases. And so if you're a nursing student, we have specialized nursing databases. If you're a STEM student, we have various STEM databases. And then again, the streaming films. So we've been doing a lot of that. The other thing that my librarian colleagues on our faculty are doing is, you probably heard this talked about a lot, that librarians teach information literacy, which is something that librarians in academic institutions have always done. But one thing post-pandemic that my librarian colleagues have developed is a really great curriculum dealing with misinformation. So it's not only information literacy and how to discern, if this is a credible source or not, but it's also teaching students how to compare when you hear things on social media or on this 24/7 news cycle. How do you know what is really valid and what is real? So librarians have shifted a lot of focus in that way, and it's just ever more critical, as we know.
Yes, I have two kids now. One of them is 7, so he's now getting into the internet.
Oh yes,
having to try to explain, like, no, I don't think that's real, buddy. He's like, no, but it's real. Like, no, I don't think it is.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. So another thing that we've been doing is we as an institution, we have one of our goals is to meet students where they are. So that means considering scheduling and calendars and all that. And one way the library did that is we bought some smart lockers. I don't know if you're familiar with smart lockers.
No.
Amazon has a lot of them where you can pick your package up at a locker. So we have 2 installations so far, one at our community learning center and one at the other Oceanside campus. And we're looking at possibly getting a third for our San Elijo campus. But essentially what they are is they're 24/7 lockers where a student can pick up technology equipment that they borrowed. But we also open it to other departments. So we'll get students that need emergency funds for gas or an Uber or something like that. And so those student services departments can put items in the lockers as well. We can have non-perishable groceries be put in them. And so it's a great way for a student, a student works all week and the only time they have childcare is Sunday night at 8:00. So they can drive up and pop open a locker and get the laptop and hotspot that they needed to borrow, or a gas card or an Uber ride, or a bag full of non-perishable groceries. So that's another way that the library has tried to meet students where they are in terms of our mission, is that is part of it. And so that's one seemingly small but big solution that really helps students a lot. So we really love the lockers. Yeah, those would be great.
So I guess I'm curious, how does that get managed? Does your staff then pick up items, go to the locker, take them out, and they kind of manage that whole supply chain process?
Yeah. We have, whenever we're loaning out technology, the students fill out a form asking what they need to borrow, and who they are. We make sure that they're a registered student. And so they can choose a locker pickup and they choose which location. And so periodically my team will take the equipment, check it out for the students and put it in the lockers. And then the student gets a notification on their phone or email, you've got something to pick up. Here's your code. In terms of external departments using it, we set up a system where they fill out a form and they say, I need to get a gas card ready for the student. And then we authorize it and give them instructions on how to put it in the locker. So we're monitoring the lockers. We have a great partner in the lockers that a company that other schools are using as well. And they have a great portal. It tells us if somebody picks something up. It tells us if it's sitting there too long. So it's really a great easy system to manage, and has been really a game changer in a lot of ways for students.
No, it sounds really cool. It's a great idea. I would have never thought, and it makes a lot of sense. And I like you're saying, trying to meet students where they are and support them.
Yeah, for sure. It's just another one of those things that we were able to provide. A lot of this had been funded through grants. And we were glad that we were able to have a little bit of money to put some of these kind of solutions in place to help students.
So we've been talking about, I guess I'd put this all in the bucket of shifts and changes, kind of, leading into the pandemic, now post-pandemic kind of era. Are there other things that are you notice that are shifting or changing kind of more recently?
Well, it's mostly just the things I talked about, where students will come to campus to take a class in person, and then they need to take one on Zoom synchronously, and then they have an asynchronous Zoom class, and they need to get some tutoring, and they need to check in with financial aid. So it's kind of a lot of the same problems and issues that students have always had, but now you throw in the online piece, and how students have shifted with their work and their working hours. And childcare and all of these kinds of things they're balancing. I think, that's a shift in itself. Another thing my college is working on is actually since about 2021, we've been engaged in futures thinking. I don't know if any of your guests have talked about that, but from the top down, our president, top down, is encouraging faculty and staff at our institution to engage in futures thinking. And so I just finished a 4-week crash course on futures. I have colleagues who've done year-long classes. In fact, one of my librarian colleagues actually wrote some of the curriculum that I experienced myself. And so that is searching for signals that may indicate what's going to be happening in the future, whether it's technology or food or jobs or health. And creating the future that you want to see at your campus. And so what do we want MiraCosta to look like in 10 or 20 years? What are the things we're seeing that could shift how we deliver instruction to students and how we service students? And so that's been really interesting. So my challenge is to continue to challenge myself to look for signals.
Yeah.
And it's not easy because, sometimes you'll think, oh, this is a signal that, my robot cat litter box is a signal, but that's really a trend because that's already happened.
Yeah.
So it might be, some innovation that the healthcare industry is just starting to look at.
Yeah.
That could be a signal that something is going to change and will become a trend in the future. But that's something definitely on our minds at MiraCosta is what will the campus look like in 10, 20, 30 years down the road?
Yeah, no, that's a really smart exercise in general. Kind of trying to think ahead, we call it external environment, or sometimes I call it reading the tea leaves.
Yeah. And it's you have to make yourself a little vulnerable when you're taking this futures thinking class because you think, oh, this is a signal. And really, it's not. It's something that's already there. And that's a trend. So you really have to stretch your imagination and stretch your researching and reading and listening and looking to find things that definitely are signals. Yeah. And then think about how those could apply to where you are, where you work, and how you serve our students.
Yeah, no, I think that's a smart way to go. That's how you get smart lockers.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Although, we weren't the first to do it. And so that was even already a trend because, of course, Amazon and others had ramped up their efforts. I remember ordering a plumbing part from a Lowe's and then just going over there and popping open a locker and getting the pipe that I needed. And then also, folks that live in houses where, maybe they don't want to receive an Amazon package at their house when they're not there because sometimes people walk off with things. So having a set of lockers in front of, let's say, a 7-Eleven, they can just drive up there and pop open a locker and get their package. So we weren't the first, definitely. There were other community colleges and universities. Actually, Cal State San Marcos put in their lockers well before us, and we have colleagues there, and we're interested in talking to them before we went down that road. But it's still an early trend, definitely. But more and more colleges are looking at them. It's a great way to deliver things,
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And so we've gone through a number of topics, and obviously you're very passionate about what you do. I'm just curious, kind of, what do you find is the most rewarding aspect of your job or your role?
I would say the biggest reward that my colleagues and I get is helping students. Every one of us comes to work every day and thinks about how our work impacts students. We also are fortunate to work in an institution that encourages us to participate in governance work and committees and being the change towards our institutional mission of closing equity gaps and making our institution a racially just institution. Mm-hmm. And, there are many people who have worked here decades longer than me, many people who have worked here for a shorter amount of time, but we all come to work loving what we do and where we work. And we know at the end of the day that, we're helping students achieve their goal. And that's really the most important thing.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting to talk to people from the library universe. And I have, when I go out with friends and, people are new people I meet, they say, oh, what do you do? And I try to explain what I do. And they're like, oh, the library. And I'm like, yeah. And we got to talking about the library. And I always tell them, like, you will never meet a more passionate group of people than librarians.
Yeah.
It's always surprising. It's every ALA or conference I go to, I've never run into a more consistently, I guess I should say, that's the key part too, the consistent passion with everybody in that community.
Yeah, absolutely. Equity and inclusion, and of course, is on everybody's mind in all institutions. We take it very seriously. We're constantly looking at policies. Does this impact disproportionately impacted students when we have this policy or that policy? We did away with late fees on books with fines. A lot of libraries have gone that route. It's really a bizarre punitive thing from the past. It's always been around. When you're a little kid, you're 10 cents a day, overdue on your 20 picture books that you checked out. Yeah. And so, are we putting up barriers that are unnecessary? So we're constantly looking at our policies to make sure that we're not creating barriers. We also really try to represent our population by putting up displays that honor different ethnicities and different holidays and cultures. Okay. We also participate in a lot of training. we have a lot of different initiatives at our college that allows us to become allies through training. So, for example, we have Black Community Ally Training, which is a course where you learn a lot more about Black history and ways you can become an ally. We also had similar training for students with disabilities. We had a similar course who are actually engaging in a Canvas course, learning about the history of movements and what things are helpful and how to speak up and how to be an ally. And everybody I work with also takes that very seriously. And most everyone throughout our institution chooses to engage in that kind of training because we want to make sure that we are truly being allies to our disproportionately impacted student groups. And also, looking at policies and procedures and making sure that we are serving people in a racially just way.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important in so many ways.
So is that something like that you should talk about the training that you guys are doing? Is that something that all of your staff does, or is that a MiraCosta wide kind of initiative? Like, how does that work?
Well, it's a college-wide initiative, but, nobody's forced to take anything. But everybody I work with signed up for everything.
Yeah.
And
oh,
so,
wow.
yeah. And so, and not everybody has time to do everything. But everyone takes advantage of as much as they possibly can. And it's also a great way to connect with colleagues that are outside of the library department. Hiring committees is another good example. I've been an equal opportunity rep on hiring committees, and that's been a work I've really enjoyed. For one thing, hiring in our institution, which is similar to a lot of public institutions, is very fair and across the board. You have a committee. Every candidate is evaluated and asked the same questions as everybody else. And everybody starts out on an equal plane. And the EEO representative is on a committee to make sure that the rest of the committee isn't asking any questions that are outside the script and outside of what's appropriate. It's a role I take seriously when I've been asked to be that. I'm never the EEO rep on a hiring committee in my own department, but I volunteer to be an EEO rep on other departments' hiring committees.
Oh, interesting. Hiring. Yeah. That's always like the biggest challenge. It's like I get a lot of questions at our webinars about, behavior and furniture, and then sometimes it gets into like the culture realm. And
yes.
And I usually tell people, I'm like, hey, as the furniture guy, I'll tell you right now, furniture was only going to get you so far. There's only so much you can do. Like you may want to look at your hiring practices and strategies like that.
Yeah.
The biggest impact across the board. I mean, when I came on to Agati over 10 years ago, that was the first thing I kind of helped revamp was like how we hired people, because it makes a huge difference in kind of your dynamic.
Yeah, we strive to hire people that look like the community they're serving and look like the students that they're working with. And, we try our best. We have a great HR team who, advertises and promotes positions in every nook and cranny that they can find, to make sure we get a great group of candidates every time. And again, everybody at this institution really cares about students and the work that we do. And they work hard to make sure that's an equitable environment as much as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate the time today. This has actually been I shouldn't say actually, it's been incredibly insightful.
Cool.
Before we go, I usually ask everybody, do you have any words of wisdom or insights for anybody?
Yeah, well, I thought about, you as furniture designers, and also, have been working with architects for a while now on the different library remodels. And I would say, for library colleagues, ask students what they want or need, and don't be afraid to take risks. And look at data. We're very data driven, qualitative data, quantitative data, but also qualitative data. Survey your students, ask them what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
You get a lot of surprising answers. And sometimes there's something that you really had no idea was bothering a student until they pointed out to you. And so, keep that in mind. Always assess with what you're doing. Is it helping to close equity gaps and reaching disproportionately impacted students? Because really that is the goal. That should be the goal of everyone working in higher education. I'd say for architects, really listen to the end users. A lot of times, library remodels sometimes don't go well. It's going very well at my institution. But I've been around outside of this institution. I've been around library remodels where it's like, really, this is what you picked. This is a place where we're going to be waiting on students all day long. And we wish you would have talked to us before this expensive thing got put in that nobody likes, and so again, I'm very lucky where I work that our voices are being heard in the planning of buildings and remodel projects. So I would say, for designers and architects, just really, quiz the end users quite a bit. Yeah. And it could be something as simple as the way a fabric feels to somebody, or how a whole room is laid out. I mean, it could be something really big and something really small, but just, listen, do a lot of listening and ask a lot of questions and visit all kinds of spaces, even ask the staff there, what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? Because you'll get a lot of surprising answers, I think.
Yeah, no, I would say that's very insightful. Well, I really appreciate the time today, and thanks so much.
Sure. Yeah, it's my pleasure, and go Pods, and and I hope I'll see you out here sometime in Southern California, so you can check out what we've done and how we're using all the great Agati products that we bought.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully I'll be out there for ALA in the next year or so.
Yeah, that's right. ALA is going to be here next year. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. It hasn't been here in a while, so we'll make plans to get you over to see what the libraries are looking like.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great.
All right. Thank you so much.
You bet. Take good care.